one engine went out, number 4 engine went out, then number two went out, then we ended up with number 3. Well, we got over, we thought we were in Metz, France. Well, Metz, France is 20 miles west of where the Siegfried Line was. But we were in Metzig, Germany, which was 20 miles east of the Siegfried Line. So turned around, the pilot gave us the okay, so that, told us to jump. So we all went and turned around and we went to, we got jumped, everybody except the pilot and the co-pilot. They stayed on. They were on for about another 60 miles they went with one engine. And we were shot up pretty good, as far as that goes.
They knocked down 3 planes.
8 missions you were lucky, 10 somebody up there liked you, 25 was almost an impossibility.
The plane blew up and I got knocked out.
Earl Joswick was a B-17 ball turret gunner in the 95th Bomb Group, and he had several close calls in the ball turret. His B-17 was shot down over Germany on his 14th mission, and he spent the remainder of the war as a POW in Stalag IV. In order to flee from the advancing Russians towards the end of the war, he and his fellow prisoners participated in a 600-mile forced march for 86 days until they were finally liberated. This is your pilot, John Sermon, asking you to sit back and strap in. Air Combat Journal is ready for takeoff.
Earl, tell me what was your crew position?
Ball turret gunner.
What did a ball turret gunner do? What were your responsibilities?
Well, we were in the ball turret down in the bottom of the plane. And when we first started, we had the ball turret, it was actually a bathtub. Then we got promoted in, it was late 43, late 43. Then we got into the Sperry ball turret, and then I was a ball turret gunner, and I got knocked out of it twice, that they had to wheel me out.
Tell me what happened. What happened the first time?
Well, one time we got shrapnel, and that was on the 3rd mission. We got shrapnel, and it took out the controls. So then they have to wind me out. So the waist gunners are usually the fellows that winds me out at that time. Then they turn around, and then on my 6th mission, then it happened all over again, and the electrical got all knocked out. And one time the glass between your legs, that got shot out. And I just about lost everything then, as far as that goes. It took off my sheepskins between my legs. It took it down, right down to my suntans. But I made it. That way, so it worked out. For the best. Well, they had to wind me out again then. So they were, but then I flew to my 14th mission, and then that's when we got shot down.
Describe for me what a ball turret, what was the environment like in there? Was it cramped? Was it spacious?
Well, it was somewhat cramped, but it wasn't, to me, it wasn't that cramped. But you didn't have a chute in there. Your chute was laid outside all the time. And then when you got cranked out or got out of the ball turret, then you put your chute on. And then when we bailed out, that's what you had to do, is your chute was laid. We used a chest chute, and because you couldn't get into it with either a chest chute or, any chute actually. And then we had all our ammunition boxes and the guns, and so you tried to keep yourself warm, as far as that goes. because sometimes it got up about 40 below zero up there during there. And at that time, most of us, we just had sheepskins in our flying boots and things like that on. So it was cold. But we were young kids and we could take it. Now we can't take it.
Tell me about, was the ball turret, how was it operated?
Electrical and hydraulic on there. And it was, well, it actually hung from a framework at the top of the plane, and then then it was stationary, but then you had 360-degree deal all the way around. So it was compact, but it done the job. I mean, we done the job. But with the bathtub, the original ones, well, you were outside of the tub, and you looked down through the scope, and you worked it that way from up inside the plane. And that was the one originally, but then they changed to the Sperry, and then the Sperry was fully equipped. I mean, as far as that goes, and we had the radios and everything like that in there, but it was, you didn't stay in it actually that long. I mean, as far as that goes, I mean, but see, the whole thing is they always thought it was a hazardous place to be in, but really it wasn't, because you very seldom had planes come up from the bottom. They always come down from the top, and then they'd go to the pilot, the co-pilot, and the top turret. And very seldom you have a plane come up from the bottom. In our plane, I think we got two. We got two Jerry fighters on there, but otherwise we were pretty much protected on the bottom.
Did you ever get a piece of a plane?
Well, yes, we did, and you don't know for sure, but I mean, we got credit for two. Our plane did. So I could have got a piece or not, you never know. But when you start getting flak, you worry more about the flak than you do anything else. It got so thick there for a while there that it was you could just about walk on it. And when we flew in formation, when we'd fly in formation, we flew pretty darn close. And we'd fly from, well, I mean, you could just walk about wingtip to wingtip. I mean, that's how, and especially that black flak when we got that. And so it was an experience you have then, but you never want to go through it again.
Tell me about the fighter attacks. What do you remember about seeing the fighters?
Well, the fighters usually came in. It just depends where you were. We didn't have a lot of fighter attack then. The most escort we ever had was a P-38. The 51s and that was a little bit after us on there. See, they didn't come in till late '44. And then that's when they got the fighter attacks. So that's the way we were. And so it was a little bit sparse then, yeah, compared to what it is today. And then we started flying day missions, and then REF went and flew night missions. So that's what our 8th Air Force was mostly famous for. So that's the way things were then.
Tell me about the day you got shot down. What happened?
Well, the day I got shot down, we flew our mission, and we were going to Swankford on the Swankford raid, and that was about the 4th Swankford raid that we had at that time. That's ball bearing and factories and everything like that. We got shot down and we were on our way back, and all of a sudden we had flak, like I say, it was so thick that you couldn't hardly see through it. And all of a sudden the ball turret, or one engine went out, number 4 engine went out, then number two went out. Then we ended up with number 3. Well, we got over, we thought we were in Metz, France. Well, Metz, France is 20 miles west of where the Siegfried Line was. But we were in Metzig, Germany, which was 20 miles east of the Siegfried Line. Turned around, the pilot gave us the okay, so that, told us to jump. So we all went and turned around and we went to, we got jumped, everybody except the pilot and the co-pilot. They stayed on. They were on for about another 60 miles they went with one engine. And we were shot up pretty good, as far as that goes. So they went about 60 miles farther, and so we bailed out. And then I bailed out, and it was roughly 23,000 feet when we hit the silk. Well, when we were coming down, we were being shot at. And I had 3 panels shot out. And I had either a lake or a plowed field or a forest. I took the forest. They said take the forest because then you got some cover. So I took the forest and I hit this pine tree, and it was about 70 foot tall. My parachute went right over the top of over the top of the tree, and so I'm wiggling myself, trying to wiggle myself down. So I shot myself. I started wiggling and I went through the branches. When I came through the branches, my parachute would come down, and I hit the ground, and I busted up my leg. So I never had a shoe on for 6 months. But anyway, when I got down, we were supposed to bury our jacket and our 45s and our parachute. So I'm burying it and everything else, and down there, and not worrying too much about my leg or anything. It hurt, but that was it. So I turned around and I didn't dare take off my shoe. So all of a sudden I'm digging there and putting my parachute in the hole and everything, and in my 45 and everything, and I just got it just evenly covered up. And somebody hollered, "Earl!" And here it's my bombardier. He's about, from here to the front of the building away, and in the trees and everything else. And here these women and kids were still romping around out there too and everything else. So finally he got over by me and he says, "Can you walk?" And I says, "Well, not good, but I can walk. I can try to." So we got up and everything. So we finally got out of there. And we didn't get caught. We turned around and we got into a clump of trees, and it was darker and dark in there. And so we turned around and stayed in the clump of trees, and the kids, they kept running around and everything else. So we stayed loose for 5 days before we got caught, actually. And then we got caught being stupid. We turned around and we wanted to drink. And there was a brook that was a block away, but there was an open field between us and that brook. So we turned around, and here it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and us like dummies, we get out there. We get out in the middle of the stream, or the middle of the field, and all of a sudden, here somebody let out a holler. Here's an old German. He's looking at this one and this one at the same time. That's how cross-sighted he was. And he come out, and just as he hollered out, then the kids and women and Hitler Youth came after us. And they were gonna really get us. They had machetes, and they had hoes and axes and everything else, and they were swinging them all over the place. So we turned around, and this old German come, and he had a sawed-off shotgun, about that long. And he come flying over there from his buggy. He had a horse and buggy. And we thought, oh, we're gonna get it now. But see, it was a big honor for them to catch airmen, because it was to turn us in, because we were high priority then. So we turned around, and he kept the women and kids and everything off. So then they took us from there and took us into the town square. And then they turned us over to Gestapo. And then our prisoner of war life started. But there was just the pilot and co-pilot. Well, we got into Mannheim. That was an interrogation center. And they put us in a holding cell, city jail, you know, that's what it was. It had walls in there like this, that about 1.5 feet thick. So we went to talk to each other, and they'd put us each in separate cells. Well, my radio man is the first time I saw him till that day. Here he was in the next cell, next to me. So we dug through the wall with a spoon, and so we could see each other and everything else. And so we're seeing each other through a hole about this big. So he turned around, and then we went through the next morning, we went through interrogation. Well, that was the last time I saw the bombardier, but it was the first time I saw the pilot from a distance, like he was walking down a hall that crossed over, and I was in this hall here, and I saw him go by, and that was the last time I saw him. I mean, the first time I saw him since we were shot down, but then it was the last time I saw him until after the war was over, after we got together, after we got liberated. So I mean, that was the way the prisoner of war life went on there. So we had an experience you don't want to do over again, but the experience that you can you don't want to go through again.
What was the protocol you were taught for going through interrogation?
The only thing you did was make sure you just give them your serial number and your age and things like that, but nothing else on there. On it. Name, rank, and serial number was the big deal. And I mean, that was it. But 9 times out of 10, they knew a lot more than that. I mean, that's the way the Germans operated.
Tell me about the townspeople you encountered.
Well, the town people, that's what they were. Then the Hitler Youth. Hitler Youth was little devils. I mean, from way back, you know. I mean, they were trained that way. And there's some of them, I mean, and they'd talk rubbish and everything else. I mean, that's the way they were taught, you know, I mean, as far as that goes. And that's the way Hitler was. I mean, you know, he was going to take over the whole world, you know, in no uncertain terms, and that's what he did. And that's how he trained these kids and the women and everything. But the older people, they treated us good. I mean, as far as that goes. I mean, after we got liberated and everything else, we went and, I mean, we had in prison camp and everything, we had Big Stoop was one of the fellows that was one of the guards. He was a big SSS trooper. Leather jacket, leather pants, big boots. He had shoes, he had feet like this. And he'd come around and everything, you know, and if you didn't move, he'd hit you or he'd kick you. I mean, that's the way it was. I went through interrogation and I had a crucifix that my grandmother gave me, and dog tags on my neck. We went through stock naked. I mean, they look up your butt and everything else. I mean, that's the way they did it. So we went and we walked through, and I was going through, and he saw this here crucifix and this dog tags on me, swine, and he grabbed them like that. He started twisting them. Well, I was fortunate that the chain broke. Otherwise, he would have cut me good. And then he threw them on the floor. Then in the next breath, and I had my foot was really busted up. And he gave me a kick, and well, I went the length of this room and never hit the ground. And I got up and everything else, and I gandered over. But in the meantime, I walked through, and I had my watch and my wife's ring, class ring, in my hand. And I went through the whole inspection, and they never took it. So I came back after he gave me a kick, and I turned around and I picked up my dog tags and the crucifix and everything else. And he grumbled to beat the bands and everything else, so I got dressed, and that was it. But now, I never had a shoe on for 6 months. I mean, I was busted up pretty good. So finally, when I got in prison camp, they turned around and they wrapped it in paper, and they put something cold on it, and that's the way it healed. And then at the end of the war, the doctor in Wayzata, finally, he redid it. And I've been good. I mean, it's weak, but I mean, I've been good.
What was the prognosis? Was it broken, or what?
Yeah, it was broken right above the ankle on there. But the thing is if I would have, I didn't leave my boot on. And if I would have left my boot on, then it probably wouldn't have been quite as bad. But then I was still moving around. But I never had a shoe on for 6 months. And it was sore, but under the circumstances, you go through hell anyway.
Was there any kind of torture when you were being interrogated?
Well, that's one thing that was different between the Germans and the Japanese. The Germans would kick you around and things like that, but the Japanese was torture. And that's where we were fortunate. We never got. We were when we went up to prison camp, we went to Kiefheide. I was up at Stalag IV. That was between Stettin and Danzig. It was in Poland, really. And we were 20 miles south of the Baltic Sea. But anyway, we turned around, and when we got into prison camp, or we got to the railroad station after we got out of interrogation and everything, they took us up there, and we got to Kiefheide to the railroad station. It was 2.5 miles out to the prison camp. And they took us on a bayonet march out there. And one fella had 67 bayonet holes in him, and he had a pair of suntans on, and from the shoulder blades down to the back of his knees, he was red. And turned around. I got a couple alongside of my spine, but they didn't bother me, I mean, as far as that goes. But I took it pretty slow because I had a bad leg and everything like that. But dogs, they'd have dogs, and they'd be biting at you. And then bayonets would come at you and things like that. But when we got up there, then after we were there, well, February 6th, 45, we took off from Stalag IV, and we were on the forced march for 86 days. And we walked all around Germany and everything like that. So it was when we got through in May, and I mean, that was close to the end of the war then, over there. And so then they released us there, but it took that long, but see, that was the coldest winter that Germany ever had. I mean, it was nothing to be 40 below on there. And I had a English overcoat. And I don't remember if you noticed them blue officers' coats that they used to have. Well, that's what I had. And I went through shoes like nothing as far as that goes. And we slept in a plowed field on the 14th of February, 45. And it was cold and raining and everything else all night. And we got up in the morning, we had our jerry blankets, and we took them out and to shake them out. And when we got through shaking them, all we had was a rope in our hands. The jerry blanket all fell apart. So we were supposed to get a Red Cross parcel apiece, and we got 8 men on a Red Cross parcel. So, I mean, things like that. I was 168 when I got shot down, and I was 98 when I got out. So, but we were youngsters. We could take it a little bit then, but now we can't take nothing.
Let's go back to the bailout. Did everybody get out of your plane, or
Yep, all 10 of us got out.
how did you go out? Which door did you go out? Did you have to free fall for a while to get down?
Oh yeah, you went down.
Tell me the whole story.
You went down. Well, you actually. Well, when I left out the tail end on there, the waist gunner, the waist gunner, and or the 2 waist gunners, the ball turret, the tail gunner, and the radio man. We all went out. Usually went out the side door, and we bailed out there. And everybody, see, the thing is like me now, I jumped out once in the States here. Our top turret caught fire in Las Vegas, right across from where Carol Lombard got killed. And we bailed out 10 foot of snow. We lost one fella then on there. So we were always bragging we had experience, but that was the first time. But when we bailed out, everybody bailed out, and we bailed out like we were veterans. I mean, nobody hesitated. I mean, and I think that was part of our training, but you know, at that time of the war, our training wasn't as strenuous as it was later in the war on there. We've got a lot of fellows here in our 8th Air Force group here, and half of them, I was shot down before they even got over there. I mean, that was the whole thing. And it was, and still, I was one of the younger ones. So, I mean, that way. And our crew was, the oldest one in our crew was the bombardier. And the rest of us, we were all in there. I'm 80 now, and I mean, that's back there in 45, well, then we were 18 years old, or 20 years old. So I mean, that's the way it was. But we were more daredevil then than we are today. I mean, you know, you're not going to walk off the end of this table without watching what you're doing. That back then, you'd probably walk right off the end of it. I mean, and that's the way it was. And that's the way, I think that's the way our generation was. And it's just like Brokaw and everything when he wrote his book, Our Greatest Generation. And I think probably we were, not to be over proud of ourselves.
Tell me about your sense of duty to go fight in war.
What do you mean?
Your sense of duty that you're doing the right thing for your country and that kind of thing.
Well, the whole thing is that was the thing, actually then. Like I got out of high school like in May, and I was in the service in November. And I was overseas in 43, but just less than a year later. And I was overseas, and we were doing the thing that the older fellas were doing. But the thing was, is we were youngsters, and I think we were gung-ho to go. I mean, and to do it. Nowadays, I think it's more the money than anything else, as far as that goes. I mean, all these people that were like are in the Vietnam War and everything like that. I don't know if you were in what you were in, but anyway, the thing is that it was a different deal of patriotism and everything like that compared to what it is today on there. And I think it was our sense of duty. My brother and I went in, and well, two of my brothers went in. One brother got killed after he got out of the service, but I mean, and they went in, and my dad never did go in, and Dad was the sorriest person out. Come there. What do you got to take you kids? That's what he always said. You know, and I mean, he never had the chance to. But I think that's, the thing was back then, and that's right.
So were you aware of that, and what was your thought?
I think we were, but the truthfully about it, I think we were so-called, well, that we wanted to get into it, and I think that's the whole thing, that we didn't, and we were young, and we didn't worry about that end of it. And I think that's the way most of it is. And war is rough as heck, but somebody's going to do it.
Or yeah, they might have had second thoughts had they known that you have and well, for example, I think it was in April, your life expectancy of a B-17 crew member was 30 days.
Yeah, that's right.
And you know, if guys would have known that going in, they might have.
Well, the average bombings, I mean, the average planes are time that they went over there, and if you flew 14 missions, 15 missions at the time, you did great. And they had 25. And you look the percentage up of how many missions were flown that made 25, there wasn't a heck of a lot. I mean, as far as that goes. They didn't get their flights in or their missions in until near the end of 44 and 45, when most of the fighting was, when we had occupied a lot of our the territory. I mean, as far as that goes, like we were just about through France and everything like that then, and so that was the big thing.
Were you more fearful of fighters or more fearful of flak when you were flying?
Flak was ours at the time, yeah. Because see, we didn't have that many fighters. I mean, they had a lot of fighters, but I mean, they, you know, that's like a lot of us with formations and everything like that. We flew pretty darn close together. Like I say, we could walk from wingtip to wingtip just about. I mean, that's the way, how close we would fly. But then our pilots back then, I think, and our crews even back then, were a lot different than they were today. I mean, than they are today or in future years. Because, I mean, come and get us. I mean, that was about the attitude you'd have. And that's the way it went. And it worked out. I mean, it worked out pretty well. But then, I mean, we'd a lot of times, I mean, when we'd go and we'd get back to base, and right away we'd count how many planes we lost and everything like that. Well, we could tell when we get back to base, when the fortunate times that we got back. One time we went back, we came back, and we went over the French coast at 500 feet. And they couldn't believe it. We got into the interrogation, and the captain come out and he says, how the hell did you do that? Here's a gun here and a gun here, and we went through the middle of them. We never even got a shot off. They never even got a shot off. But we were gonna go, we dang near ditched in the English Channel that time because we were shot up pretty bad. And then our Tokyo tanks wouldn't drain into our main tanks. So we had the air-sea rescue was down below and everything else. And we were turning around and we didn't know if we would make it. Finally, we got the pilot and the engineer, he went out in the Bombay and they took the axe and hit the doggone transfer valve and gas started coming in. And here the White Cliffs of Dover are right in front of us. We pulled up over that and the captain couldn't believe how the heck we made it. But that was the chances we made.
Tell me about the survivability of the B-17. Do you think it was a pretty rugged, survivable aircraft?
Oh yes, it was. For the simple reason is that, I mean, well, like we were shot up, and I mean, we'd go back, and many times we come back with our plane. Well, our plane had 122 missions on it. And I mean, I got a whole history of our plane, and it was the 10 Aces. And we had 100, and there was 122 missions on that plane. And that started in early 43, or late 43 to late 44. And so, I mean, till we went down, we took her down, I mean, as far as that goes. But I mean, the 17 was a little bit better in flying, flying missions than the 24 was, because it had the more maneuverability, I think, than the 24 it had. And but like I say, I mean, we had more spam can holes covered with in our 17 than I think any plane around as far as that goes. I mean, you'd get a shot through it or a flak hole in it, and they'd go and they'd take a piece of metal and put a screw on the inside and a screw, or a nut on the inside and a screw on the outside and bolt it together. And that's the way it was. But see, they were built so much different. They didn't have pressurized cabins or nothing like that. We used our oxygen. And I mean, so that was the whole thing. And the biggest thing you dreaded was getting your oxygen tanks hit, because see, that was instant fire right away. So that's what they were protected. So we had pretty good armor plate around them. Otherwise you'd have to go and I mean, that was worse actually than flak or anything like that. Like I said, I had my controls knocked out a couple times out of the ball turret and that, but still, it was at the time. Well, have I got my leg left yet, or have I got this, or whatever I got? But still, we were here, and we made it. But all 10 of us made it, and we're still. There's 4 of us living yet, so we're still in pretty good shape.
Did you ever, I guess, fear for your life as a crew member, or were you pretty much pretty bold in terms of not being fearful of the Luftwaffe or flak or whatever?
Well, we weren't. I don't think we were. That's from being young, and I mean, our whole crew were like family. It's just like the time when we were in the States. We went on a practice mission from Dalhart, Texas, to up to Denver, Colorado, on a practice mission one night. We're flying, and all of a sudden, doggone, out of the clear sky, the pilot dropped her. And here's a plane right above us. And I laid in the hospital for 27 days with ear problem. I thought, well, I'm grounded, I'll be out. Laid in the hospital for 27 days on sulfur drug and everything else. And 27th day, here the darn crew comes out. They get a limousine. They turn around. We're going to Raton, New Mexico. We're going to Trinidad, Colorado. We're going out on the town because we're going to be shipped out. And I didn't even know if I was going to be shipped out or not because I was laid in the hospital. But in the meantime, they tried to put me on a 25. And the crew got all together. The heck with that noise. We're all staying on the 17. So anyway, we go to Raton, New Mexico and everything else. I laid in a hotel room all weekend, never even got out. I was so darn weak and everything else. I didn't have a dime in my pocket. My co-pilot comes there and he says, here, and he gives me $85. He says, here. He comes to this day, he comes and he says, did you ever pay me back that $85? And I mean, things like that. And that's the way our crew was. If I had 10 cents in my pocket, you had 25 cents, and the other guy had 50 cents, and the other guy had $50, didn't make any difference. We went out. And that's the way it was then, back then. And I don't think you'll ever find it just in our 8th Air Force or our whole deal in World War II. They come and they say it's the greatest generation, and I think that's what made it right there, on there. We'd go out on a mission. We'd go and get communion every morning at the chow line. We'd have communion, and regardless, there was 6 of us were Catholic, the other 4 weren't, but we still had communion. And I mean, little things like that. And I mean, that was the whole thing.
Speaking of religion, did your pilot ever have a group prayer before a flight or anything?
We had one just about every morning before we took off on a mission in the mess hall. Mm-hmm. Yeah, just every morning. Mm-hmm. Well, that was just like D-Day. We flew over in France, and we turned around, and I flew 3 missions that day. And we go back, we'd get a shot of brandy, and they'd turn around and we'd take off again. And we'd go back. We had 3 missions that day, so we got a shot of brandy each time. And went over and dropped our bombs, and that was to come back again. But I mean, that's the way it was. But I mean, very seldom, I mean, you'd go into the mess hall when you'd leave on a mission, and 9 times out of 10, that was probably the last call was about 6 o'clock in the morning, and then you'd take off and go. And you'd have breakfast, and you'd have, like you have communion and everything like that. But everybody was sitting there. I mean, it was one group that way. I mean, and that's the way we were all the time. But we nobody ever starved that way. I mean, as far as that goes. I was with my top turret gunner, and I was with him. We went through prison camp together most of the time. We were in Stalag IV. We had 6 of us in there, but we were the closest ones together. We were in the same barracks and everything else there.
Now, while you were recuperating with your foot, getting back to the POW story, the shoot-down story, were you able to walk on your own, or did you have to have somebody help carry you? Or
when we were on the road, my bombardier carried me. Then he stole a bicycle, and then he'd either buck me on the bicycle, or I'd ride it 1 foot. I mean, that's the way it was on there. But he should have been a doctor. I mean, because that's the way he was. That was the type of guy he was. He was from Arkansas, in Little Rock, Arkansas. He was Bobby Dials, and he was just a neat guy all the way around. But he went up through the ranks. He was a warrant officer and everything like that. First lieutenant, then he got he was second lieutenant, then he got first lieutenant. But I mean, he come up through the ranks, and he was a sergeant and everything like that. So he was, but rank didn't mean nothing. I mean, as far as that goes. My pilot was a captain and everything, but that didn't mean nothing. I mean, I was a buck sergeant, then I was a staff, then I was a master. But the whole thing is I still, rank didn't mean nothing. I mean, as far as that goes. We hardly ever saluted anybody. I mean, as far as that goes. So, and they never enforced it, and I mean, things like that. We were a big family. I mean, that's the way we were during World War II anyway. I mean, our outfit was that way anyway, on there.
Let's get back to the march again. What was the hardest part about that march? I mean, give me some details, like how many people died, and you know, the mileage.
Well, we buried one. We buried one. He was from Lancaster, Texas, and we buried him, and he was on the march. He was malnutrition that he had, and he was in pretty darn bad shape. And I had a prayer book in my that I carried with me all the time, and I wrote everything down. I had everything down on there, and we buried him on the march down there. And then when I got out, I give him the details. Let's see if I don't know if I got a copy of that here or not, but this made the whole deal. No, I haven't. See, we've got a whole Dr. Kaplan. He wrote an affidavit for us, and it's in the courthouse here in Minneapolis. And of all our experiences of the march and everything like that, and he wrote that, and all the fellas that died on the march and everything like that. And in all told, there was 10 of them. But this Lloyd, he lived in Texas, and I notified his family when I got home. And see, when I was prisoner of war, they called the government didn't get a hold of my folks before shortwave radio operator was from Texas, and he called my parents that I was a prisoner of war. And that's how they found out before the government even got, before the telegram come that that I was missing in action. So they knew all about it before the government let them know. So I mean, things like that, you know. I mean, but you know how government works sometimes. Sometimes they're fast, sometimes they're slow.
So how many guys started out on the trip, and how many finished the trip?
Well, there was about 2,500 that were in Stalag IV. But see, the whole thing, Wes Borgeson, he was in camp, but he left later than I did, and he got in later than I did into camp. But see, he was the one that he landed in a tail section, and so he turned around, and so they left different times. But then some went in boxcars, but some of them, we stayed on the road, and we went through. Well, I got a map. Well, we got a map here of what we walked and everything else. We ended up in Bitterfield, and that's when that's where we got liberated.
And how many total miles was that? Do you remember?
Was under 600, 556, I think it is, on there.
Now, how did you guys keep from freezing to death and all that? And What did you eat?
By moving, and we used to take, we used to go, I carried a horseradish root. Horseradish comes in roots like, well, like a tree root. You know, they're about this long. I mean, you cut them about this long, and they're probably about that big around. You peel it back, and I carried a root with me most of the time, and that kept us warm. The horseradish, you know, you eat raw horseradish, and that keeps you warm. And that's things like that. But a lot of times, we slept in barns, we slept in plowed fields, we slept in churches, wherever they'd give us. One trip we were in, I forget what town it was now, but anyway, we went and they had a big barn, and they had a big stainless steel cooker in there for pasteurizing milk. And they turned around and they went and they strafed, our troops strafed a colt, and we got it. So we had horse meat, rudabeckies, and potatoes and everything else. And see, they used to go and they'd take their potatoes and they'd put them in big heaps for in the wintertime and then cover them with dirt. By the time we'd get through in one of them farmyards, half of that would be gone. We'd all be walking with pocketfuls and everything like that of potatoes. But I mean, most of the time you never could build fires or anything like that. So, I mean, that's the way it worked. But we were, the thing was, I mean, you took care of it. Most of us, there was two of us together, so you'd share blankets and everything like that. The coldest night was the night we slept outside. And
Well, how did you ever dry out though? I mean,
you really didn't. You really didn't. I mean, on there. When the wind or the weather changed, and that's why you'd get into a barn or something. Well, you'd get into a hayloft or something like that, and that was warm. I mean, it was warm after you get so many bodies. But then a lot of times, you get in there and they'd shove you in there and you couldn't even lay down. So I mean, things like that. But
yeah, I was gonna say with 2,500 people.
yeah.
How many guards were with you, and how did they handle logistics like that?
One time we raised so much cane that we had one guard for every 10 men. See, the theory is we'd take those guards off the front lines. So we were helping the war effort. And that was the theory of the whole thing on there. In our camps, our prison camps even the same way. We'd raise so much cane, we'd go and we'd have lines of men, and there'd be, there'd probably be 10 to 20 men not in the ranks. They'd be in the barracks sleeping. And we'd shuffle along so there was never a miscount. And things like that we'd pull. We slept in the barracks, when we were in the barracks in prison camp, we were in the barracks and they turned around and they had blackout shutters, and they'd put at 4 o'clock in the afternoon they'd put the blackout shutters on the barracks, and we were supposed to have lights out. We'd turn around and we'd be playing cards. All of a sudden, these blackout shutters, you know, they got so rickety that it wasn't funny. They had lines in them and you could see the light through and everything else. Or the guards in the tower, they'd come there and they'd start shooting at us. And so we'd turn around and we'd have our ole margarine lights. We'd make candles out of them. And so we'd turn that. And so instead of playing on top of the table, we'd play under the table. and we play our cards and everything under there. But I mean, that's the way they were. And then they had 10-foot strips around the compounds from the fence until and there was 10 foot in between there that you couldn't walk into. We'd throw the ball in there anyway. We'd go in there to get the ball and dare them to shoot us. But I mean, we'd do things like that. One time, one of the Jerry's there was 4 compounds. Like this was the center, and then there was like this, and there was 1, 2, 3, 4 compounds. Right here was a light post on there. Jerry got up there, and he was fixing something on the light, and he electrocuted himself. And everybody raised Cain. He electrocuted himself. Was one way of getting rid of the Jerry's, you know. I mean, that way. And things like that, you know, that had happened. But that's the way it was. I took off after I had my foot when I was in prison camp. We had our infirmary was outside the main gate. So I'd go out there to get treated. And so it was, I don't know how many times I went out there, but then this one time we felt pretty good. I felt pretty good, and there was another fella at the infirmary. So we take off for the woods, and we got loose for a few hours. And funny, we didn't get shot then. Then on New Year's Day, or Christmas Eve, 44, we slept we were good, and so they let the camp open, let us out of the barracks till midnight, was supposed to be. But we took advantage of that too. We had a tunnel dug out. They turned around and the guards walking the tunnel, walking the outside of the compound. He fell in the dang wall let loose of the tunnel. He fell in there, but he never lived to tell about it because they got him. So then another guard come into the camp, wanted to know what happened and everything else. So they had their press or their badge, you know, and that's like throwing your life away, actually, as far as that goes. They had to carry that for sure. We stole that from him, threw the darn thing away on him. He got thrown up back to the front lines, so we never saw him again. And things like that. I mean, there was always something going on like that.
Now, did you ever have a successful tunnel or prison escape from Stalag?
Well, part way, but they didn't. See, Stalag IV, they did, and they had the tunnel, and that's the big escape. You remember? I mean, you probably read about it, and that was there. And we had quite a few fellas that were there too. Well, Norm Grant was there, and I don't know if you knew Don Bruns. He was from Wisconsin. He was from Stalag III, so there was quite a few of them. And then there was quite a few of them from Harold Van Every and them. They're from Barth I. So we were all in that vicinity up there. So
Wes told me that you guys got Red Cross packages. At first it was one package for every 8 men, and then eventually it was one package a person, or did that ever change?
Oh, we were supposed to get a package apiece. Well, it's just like my mother did. Mother and my wife now, but they sent me Red Cross parcels. Well, they sent 14 of them. And I mean, our parcels, our personal parcels, I got 2 out of the 14. And I mean, they were sent that way. Cigarette parcels and stuff like that. We used to get them that way too. But I never smoked in there because they were good trading policy. I mean, good for trading. And your Red Cross parcel, you were supposed to get 1 Red Cross parcel a week. But 9 times out of 10 you didn't get it. But you got your soup. You got your soup, your potato soup, and your things like that, and your black bread, And I mean, they used to come carry the black bread in on a sawdust wagon. The bread would be in sawdust and covered up with sawdust
Now, why would they do it that way?
to preserve it.
Oh, okay. Keep
Yeah,
it fresh.
yeah.
Did they ever find out after the war where the Red Cross packages were going?
Well, you could tell actually they were, I mean, they'd steal them because they didn't have nothing themselves. I mean, the Germans didn't have too much, you know, as far as that goes. I mean, on there, it's just like the Red Cross parcel, a truck would try to come into us, get into us on there when we were on the march. And sometimes they wouldn't, sometimes they wouldn't. But like that third night, the 14th of February, 45, we slept in a plowed field all night, and then we were supposed to get a Red Cross parcel the next morning, and we got 8 men on a Red Cross parcel. So you skimp quite a bit, but we stole potatoes and stuff like that, I mean, as far as that goes. And they couldn't quite figure that out. We were gonna get shot and we were gonna do this and everything else. Well, then they thought better because they didn't wanna shoot you, for the simple reason is because we were good trading power. I mean, that's what they always figured the Air Force was good trading power. The Russians took us, took a lot of prisoners of war and everything like that, and they took them up to Siberia that way, and there was no account for them, as far as that goes. So they don't know where they went. But then there was stories years back that a lot of GIs stayed over there, and they were still trying to get Social Security over here, from over here. I mean, but they stayed over there because it was cheaper living and everything like that. Yeah.
Well, that's hard to believe that people would
Yeah.
want to do that.
Well, that's it.
Well, tell me about the Russian prisoners and how they were treated and how they were.
Well, we had the Scheisenwagen, for one thing, to pump out the latrines and everything over there, and that was their job. And anything that was dirty, that was what they did. That's the way they treated the Germans. Germany, I mean, those, and then a lot of times even our Jewish people, I mean, the same way. I mean, the Jewish people, if they found out they were that way, I mean, they were Jewish people, watch out. I mean, that was the big thing.
Now, were you guys aware of any of the extermination camps when you were there?
The closest I ever got to one was Auschwitz. And that's the closest one I ever got to.
But when you were there as a prisoner of war, were you aware that they were exterminating Jews and?
No. They kept it pretty much that way. See, the whole thing is they had that propaganda deal, the Germans did, and we didn't believe that. It was just like Roosevelt when he died. We didn't believe it. We didn't believe it on there because we were on the road and everything else, and they said, oh, how did they, I forget now, how the higher ups, the President of the United States died. And we didn't believe it. But I mean, that's the way they'd come. But every other day, they'd have something that they would bring over to German radio and things like that.
Tell me about your liberation. I mean, towards the end of the war, the German people pretty much knew the war was over, didn't they? And how were you treated as your march was coming to an end?
Well, it was, the Russians started coming in from one way, and the British come in another way, and Americans come in from another way, see? And we got into Bitterfield there, and when they come down, the old Germans, they threw down their rifles and everything else. When the British got us, I mean, the British went and got us released. I mean, as far as that goes, and we were in this camp down there by Bitterfield, and we turned around and we walked in, and all of a sudden here they come in and the gates went down, and that was it. But the old Germans right away, they threw their rifles away and everything else. I had one, I carried one for quite a while, but then I got tired of carrying the darn thing and I give it away. But I mean, things like that. But the thing is the old Germans were fine, but the young Germans, they wouldn't. The big Stoop, the one that was kicking us around all the time and everything else, we hung him on a flagpole. Yeah, we took the chain and put it around his neck and up he went. And then little Joe was a little guy. And anyway, he walked around all the time with a bayonet on his rifle. And he'd come and he'd be probbing everybody. And he was afraid. I got his belt and I got his canteen and I got that at home. I mean, as far as that goes. But we didn't do nothing to him, but Big Stoop, we got him. He was, that was when we were in Bitterfield and he come in there. And he thought he wasn't going to give up, but up he went.
Well, did the Germans in the camp, or the Germans who were holding you, did they put up any resistance at all?
No, they knew it was over. And I think they knew it was over before we even got that far as that goes, because, I mean, everything was changed quite a bit. I mean, but the thing was that we still didn't have food and stuff like that. I mean,
what do you think the motivation for marching you was? Was it truly to get away from the Russians?
To protect,
or to kill you, to exterminate you?
No, they'd never do that. I don't think they'd ever do that, would have ever done that. Because, see, we were, Air Force was, airmen in general were high priority. And they never turned around that they would go and I don't think they would have ever killed us unless they had a real good reason to, but they never did. But the biggest threat was to us was the younger generation, like the Hitler Youth and that. Oh, I tell you, they'd rather hit you in the head or kill you than look at you, as far as that goes. And the women and kids and that, but it took a while for them to change that, you know, I mean, as far as that goes.
Do you have any stories of being fed or put up by German townspeople after you were liberated, or?
No. Well, the only thing is we went through houses and that. We had the best chicken dinner we ever had in a farmhouse, but everybody was gone. We come through. We went from Bitterfield then, and we were actually free then, and we went to Belgium. And then Belgium, then that's when we got a plane back. A Lancaster, we flew back, and they flew us back to Lucky Strike. But before we got to Belgium, we went through and there was a farmhouse. So there was chickens running around and everything else. So we got chickens, and we had chickens and eggs and everything else there. So we cooked ourselves a dinner there. I got a little plate I brought home. It's a little dish about this big around. And Love Thy Mother was on that plate in German. And I brought that home, and that's the only thing that I brought home on there. But that was in a farmhouse when we were on there. And there was, well, four of us, and we got an Opel. We stole an Opel out of a doggone garage over there. And it was one of these hay burners, and we drove that into Belgium until a Frenchman come along, and we went and we sold it to him for about $500. So on there, they had money. I mean, as far as that goes, but I mean, that's the way we got to Belgium. But then we got to Lancaster, and it's the first time I ever flew in a Lancaster, and the wings flopped like it was a big bird. That's how the wings, them were the basket weave ones, you know, and that's the way we flew back to England then. I mean, flew back to Camp Lucky Strike in France.
Well, tell me about Camp Lucky Strike. What was that camp like?
Well, it was just it was a camp to I mean, repatriation camp and things like that. But it wasn't. It was just a turning point And they only kept us, we were only there for about 3 days. And then we got shipped, we got on the boat right away to come back home. And then we got into Shanks, New York, and then we had our big dinners and stuff like that, which we couldn't eat. We eat a little bit, about this big, and that was it. They had anything and everything we wanted. We had steak or chicken or ham or whatever, ice cream or anything we wanted really, as far as that goes, but nobody could eat it. And then we went there, from there we went to, we were supposed to come home for 60 days, but then they sent us down to Florida and for recuperation. Well, I got sicker than hell down there. So I got transferred to Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and then that's where I got discharged, at Sioux Falls, South Dakota.
Now, what was your family doing during all this period? I mean, were they kept abreast of?
Oh yeah, they were. Only time was when I was missing in action, and then it took quite a while for the government to get their wires untangled and everything else, but still I was, when I come home and everything like that, well then it was, I got home in November of 45. So, but see, we had the war, the POW letter, and see, usually you had to have over 100 points to get out. Well, we only had to have 50.
To what do you attribute your survival of the war?
Well, I think mostly you got faith. I mean, the old guy upstairs, he watches over you on there, and I think that's what brought you around mostly. I mean, as far as that goes. I got an arm here now that's still, this is as high as I can go. And it's still back actually from when I hit the tree on there, because I landed hard. But I'm walking around. What the heck? They wanted to operate on it quite a few times already, and therapy doesn't really help it. But the thing is I'm here, 80 years old. Mm-hmm. I can't complain, I don't think. Yeah. Too much.
Well, tell me, I'm very intrigued by your bailout story. So did you just listen, you all queued up at the door, and then he rang a bailout bell, and you all just went one at a time? Or did you have to take a bottle of oxygen with you? I mean, because you bailed out at 24,000 feet, which is pretty high.
Well, no, we had an oxygen bottle, but I mean, the thing was, you're down pretty fast. I mean, I was roughly 15 grand when I opened up, as far as that goes. But the biggest thing was you had to watch out for the tail and stuff like that, bail out the right way. And we were more or less trained to do that, and we did it. But nobody, the pilot says, okay guys, I think we're gonna have to leave. And then afterwards, and the co-pilot and everything else, they said, well, we're gonna go see how much farther we can go, but we didn't want to jeopardize all the whole crew. So when the navigator and the bombardier, they got out of the nose and everything like that, and the rest of us got out, well, we were all set to go. But we so-called, I think we all had a plan, and I think that's what we did. On there. And a couple of times, like when we were going to ditch in the channel, that was about the same way. Heck, we were going to throw out guns and everything else. And all of a sudden, doggone it anyway, the gas starts coming in. Well, here the old air sea rescue is right down there. And you could just about pick out who was piloting this and who was doing this and everything else. From the plane, that's how low we were. And all of a sudden the pilot come there and he says, we're going home. And that's all he said. But then the next thing was the White Cliffs of Dover. We were heading right for him, I'll tell you. And I don't think he missed them doggone things by 1,000 feet, because it was really going down fast. But I mean, that's the way it was. But the thing was, is I think we had trust in each other. That was the big thing, too, was trust in each other. And then I think, like I say, the faith helped us a lot. And it didn't make any difference who you were or what you were or what I was or anything else. We still were on the same channel. And I mean, I think that made the interesting part of it. I never regret it. I mean, as far as that goes, I mean, on there. And I've flown every year since. So every time a B-17's around here, well, I'm in it. I didn't think I'd ever see Minnesota again. I mean, that's how bad it was. Mm-hmm. And when this one fella got the bayonet holes in him, I tell you, we didn't think he was going to pull through, but he did. We sent people back that got repatriated. We got people, guys sent back. We had one fella in prison camp. He'd sit down and we had knife and fork and that, and he turned around, and the minute he'd see a knife or a fork, he'd go wild. And we sent him home. We got him sent home through the Red Cross, because that's how scared he was of a knife or a fork or something that could jab him like that. And that's the way it was. And we finally got him, went through the Red Cross and everything else, and we finally got him sent home. But I mean, things like that happened. But it was, truthfully about it, under the circumstances and everything else, it was very rare. But it's something I never will forget. But I mean, like a lot of people, I mean, well, that's a story. Well, sure, it's a story, but the whole thing is, it's a true story. I mean, that's the big thing.
Yeah, and that's why I'm doing this. Is
Yeah.
Like the first person true story.
Yeah, that's right.
I remember what I was going to ask you. You said you accounted for 8 people from your crew that got out. What happened to the other 2? Did you ever find out?
Oh yeah, no, all of us got out.
Oh, all 10?
All
Okay.
10 got out.
Okay.
But the pilot and co-pilot went farther than the 8,
Okay.
the other 8 went.
Okay.
They went about 60 miles farther than we did. We got out at Metzig, Germany. I mean, that's where we bailed out. And they went a little farther, but they didn't get across the border. See, so how long does it take you to go 60 miles? It doesn't take very long. So they had to be in Germany. So when we got into interrogation, well, then all of a sudden here, going across the intersection there, here's Tony Hamlick, that's my pilot. And that was the first time I saw him until after the war was over, on there. But now we see each other all the time. He's living yet, my co-pilot's living yet, and my top turret gunner and I are living yet. He lives down in Missouri, one lives in Delaware, and I live here. So the 4 of us are still here. So, and we're still in pretty good shape as far as that goes.
Oh yeah, especially based on all the things you've been through.
Yeah, well, that's it. That's the thing.
Well, something else that amazes me is the fortitude. Like you talked about the guy with the 60-some-odd bayonet punctures.
Yeah.
And your punctures in your back, and the fact that you were malnourished and you were probably hypothermic, and then you were forced to march almost 600 miles, and then people weren't dying of infection and gangrene, and I mean, that just amazes me.
Well, that's the thing. That's the thing. See, I mean, I think everybody, the biggest thing was food. And the biggest thing was, well, you didn't have a bowl of soup or something like that that you knew was good. you didn't know for sure what the deal was. But just like potatoes and that, 9 times out of 10, I think you probably ate half of the dirt that was on the potato. I mean, as far as that goes, you never had a chance to wash it or nothing like that. But the thing is I think we were trained enough to know that that's what the situation was going to be on there. But then we were youngsters and we could take it that way. Because most of us, I mean, back then, I mean, it's even a lot different than it is today. I mean, now, I mean, I don't think the kids or anything can take it today. I mean, as far as that goes, we're not heroes, we're not anybody special, but we still had a different constitution than they got now, today. I mean, that's the whole thing. Like when my son comes and he says, well, we can't do this, or my grandson says, we can't do this or anything else, I says, well, then you don't want to eat this here ice cream tonight or something like that. Oh, Grandpa, we can't do that. You know, I mean, that's the way it is. But I mean, that's life. But I mean, like I say, you still got to have your faith and keep going, I mean, that way. Because, I mean, over the years, I mean, but it's maybe the way you're brought up too. I give my mother and dad a lot of credit, but the whole thing is Dad passed away in '82 and Mother passed away in '88, and we never talked about it. And I'm sorry as can be, but what do you do? I mean, we just didn't talk about it then. And now I go to the schools, I go to this, oh, you did this, you did that. I didn't do nothing, I just telling you my story. I mean, that's the whole thing. But I'm sorry as could be about not telling Dad and Mother what happened and things like that. And so, and Dad was the sorriest one. He never could get in because, and us 3 boys, we were in, and I don't know why they take them damn kids, he'd say. And I mean, that's the way it was. But that's the difference now and then. Yeah.
Earl Joswick passed away on December 21st, 2010 at the age of 87. His story of determination and valor lives on here at Air Combat Journal. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to Air Combat Journal. I also want to say a big thank you to all my loyal subscribers. Thank you for your patience as I get these interviews out. If you enjoy reading World War II historical fiction, check out my novel on Amazon, The 9th Bomber Reunion. While the storyline is fiction, a lot of the incidents and day-to-day events came from actual events from my over 200 interviews with World War II airmen. Godspeed.